All right, Deborah, if you don't mind jumping on video and audio, that would be great.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Is it good morning for you or
No, it is actually afternoon. I'm in Atlanta.
okay, cool. Well, stoked to be able to have a conversation with you today. Thank you for making the time. Um, I have this like silly getup that makes me look like air traffic control, but hopefully the sound is good. Um, so Deborah,
Sound great.
what's your name? Who do you work for and what do you do?
Hello, I am Devorah Rosner. I am the Senior Manager of Global Workplace Operations at Twilio, and I am based in our Atlanta office, remote, not in office, Atlanta office.
Yeah, cool. My name is Andrew Farah. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Density, where we measure how humans use space. We build sensors and software that figure out space utilization in real time for the workplace. I'm also your host for this workplace innovation series, and really excited to have Deborah on. Uh, I thought we might actually just quickly situate the group. We've got people from um, sort of all walks of real estate, everything from workplace to real estate and portfolio management. Um, what's the scope of Twilio's operation? Can you give me a sense of like total square footage, headcount? This will give sort of folks a sense of how to compare relative to their
Mhm.
businesses.
Sure. We have 27 offices worldwide. We cover all the our main regions. Let's see, we're about 750,000 square feet globally, 5,000 employees, give or take.
Cool. And so you joined right as the pandemic hit. Is that right?
Yeah, about a week and a half after we shut our offices.
And what were you doing before? What was your role before at which company?
I was with a very small company called Beyond HQ, building real estate strategy and workplace as a service
Gotcha.
for a brief period of time.
So what does it mean to be in workplace in a pandemic? I'm like particularly curious, like what does the team look like? What are you working on? What does it mean to be in sort of office management and workplace in a pandemic?
It means that every day is an adventure. Let's just start.
For us
Let's
all,
just
for us
start right
all.
there.
Yeah.
Right. Um, let's see. In a pandemic, like everyone, we've had to rethink just everything from A to Z about what our real estate footprint looks like, how we use space, how we used to use space, how we will be using space, what our customer needs are, and how we will support those customer needs. So my global team has spent the last year really sort of looking at refining our operations model, building scalable tools, the kinds of things that a lot of workplace teams just never have the heads down time to focus on building scalable operations. So all those projects that you always hope you can get to, but you can't because the nature of the job is interruption driven, the team has really had an opportunity to dive in deep and lay some scalable foundations so that we are ready to service the needs of our customers
Yep.
when we do go back, as well as designing how do we go back? How do we go back safely? How do we put safety first, but still meet the business needs? And then what is our new operating model moving forward now that we've all proven that we can work from home for the last year successfully and continue to run a business?
Yeah. So I guess, you know, from our early conversation, I think you'd said that you were making a pretty major change in how you think about assigned versus unassigned. What's the
Mm-hmm.
percentage of assigned today or pre-pandemic, and what is the plan going forward? What's the percentage of assigned going forward once everybody's back?
I'll start with what it was before I got here. But my understanding is that we were roughly 15% were remote, either at least part-time remote, if not full-time remote. And over the course of the year, some partner teams have built this program that we're calling Open Work, which categorizes our employees based on the type of work that they do and whether their role requires them to be in the office or requires face-to-face collaboration. And so our employees, or if they really truly can work from anywhere. And so we've built these categorizations of daily employees, flex employees, and then remote. And the idea being our target, going back over the next year or so, is that we're going to be hiring with roughly 40% really fully remote in our new model.
Will that
And the balance,
will that apply to existing employees? Like, do you think that you're,
Mhm.
40% of 5,000 will end up being fully remote?
Yeah, that's the target anyway.
And you were at 15% prior to the pandemic, is that right?
A little less than 15%. Yeah,
Gotcha.
give or take. So a lot of it really just has to do with who we're hiring and how we're hiring, and our philosophy around needing to hire people where the manager is or where the team is.
Sure.
And what we've learned with working from home is that you really can hire the best talent and source it from anywhere, and that those people are no longer really need to be tied by historic definitions to a physical office. And it's expanded our ability to hire great talent everywhere.
But one of the common like pieces of pushback have to do with like culture building, that so much
Mhm.
of the office is designed for retention, or that the office is designed to help create sort of a sense of belonging and a sense of like community. So if almost half of your employees, both current and going forward, so 40% will be remote, how do you think about, I guess, and this is a broader question than just the office, but like, how do you think about maintaining onboarding folks and making sure they understand drawing the owl, and making sure they understand sort of, uh, you know, early telephony, Jeff Lawson's early telephony stuff, and the sort of the lore of Twilio. How do you sort of onboard in a way that maintains and sort of contributes and adds to the culture, as opposed to slowly kind of sips away at it because I'm just sort of like logging into my pajamas or a pair of shorts. Also, by the way, I realize I'm asking questions and sort of letting a note to the attendees. If you have questions, add them to the Q&A and I will incorporate them into the discussion. There are no silly questions, so anything you're curious about. So Devorah, tell me a little bit about culture.
Oh boy. We have a fantastic partner team that was very small and is now growing, called Employee Experience, who are one of our key sort of cross-functional partner teams. And we are working sort of deeply with them, looking at exactly that. But the employee experience really is a sort of an amalgamation of technology, of building in the expectation of travel into the new hire onboarding for those employees who are remote. And we're also building hubs of regions. Mm-hmm. So traditionally, people are tied to a site. When they start, they're either a remote employee or they are tied to a given office location. So what we're doing is we're building actual regions where you may be a remote employee or a flex employee.
But you have a place to go.
But you have a place to go
period.
For, for example, for Atlanta at email alias questions. So building a sense of community for new hire happy hours, for other events and communications that are tied to a particular region are no longer tied to the building, but rather to the employees within the hub, which is a much broader region.
Does that mean that you end up with more industrious like spaces, more sort of WeWork or co-working type spaces? I guess what I'm saying is, like, if Atlanta is a sort of a hub, are you thinking like just sort of an amalgamation of smaller offices that people can come into? And does that change your real estate strategy going forward? Or are you going to just sort of like ad hoc kind of build and buy spaces based on where you end up hiring?
Not the latter, that's for sure. It's not going to be an ad hoc thing. We're developing a location management strategy around what triggers opening a new office. We could have a concentration of employees in a given geographic region, but if the work that they're doing doesn't require that a team be co-located in an office, then we're looking at sort of global access passes to WeWorks, things like that, where employees might need a place to go, but it's not a place every day or 3 times a week, or that's consistent. Like a lot of the go-to-market teams, for example, they're on the road a lot. They're making calls a lot. They're happy to do it from home and not have to schlep in, to an office, or if they're on the road a great deal. But we will have quarterly or however often they need to have their sales team meetings where the teams come together at one of the office bases. But it's really much more strategic about looking at why people use space and what space does to support the business. And to your point, culturally, absolutely. There's a lot of sort of visualization in the branding and identity around a space and what an office looks like. And travel will be encouraged, and that's being built into the budget to make sure that we're getting people together regularly.
You're sort of moving real estate spend or perhaps servicing spend into maybe travel spend and like supporting folks from home. What percentage, if you were to just guess, and I'm not going to hold you to this, hopefully none of the Twilio, do you have a term like Twillions?
Twillion.
Okay.
Twillions.
All right. So hopefully none of the Twillions on the call today will hold you to this, but I'm just sort of curious, like what percentage of folks need to be in an office, like have work at Twilio that they do and need to do in an office?
So like the critical infrastructure or the categorization of daily is less than 5% of our global staff.
So why not get rid of 95% of offices? I guess like give me the bull case for why you continue to invest in offices as opposed to with a company like Twilio that clearly has so much to do with like digital infrastructure. What's the need for physical space?
Well, collaboration doesn't go away, and getting people together, the ideas that happen when you're physically together in a room with a physical whiteboard, although we're introducing a lot of new technology tools as well to be able to facilitate doing that remotely or have people dial in to do that remotely. But the accidental interactions that happen in a space, the community building that happens in a space, again, the sense of identity and brand that happens, we're basically redesigning our spaces. So if we keep our footprint the same, but we've gotten rid of the one-to-one desk allocation because people want to be in the office 1 to 3 days a week. So why would their desk sit empty for 80% of the time? And we're reallocating that space, those spaces as hackable spaces, scrum spaces. We're calling them dynamic spaces, where furniture is reconfigurable to be used by a small team, a big team, for a meeting, for a scrum, you name it. So it's creating yet another opportunity or another way in which people can collaborate. So it's no longer a one size fits all and you try to make, everyone come into the office to do these things, but it allows more variety to meet people where they are, to work how they work. And there are people, a lot of people, myself included, who love the energy of coming into the office, who love the community, the sense of understanding of the different business units, how the business works, and the sense of identity that comes from your offices. And that's not going to go away. That's part of the fabric of Twilio.
Can we talk about sort of back to one of the original questions around assigned and unassigned seating? Like practically speaking, what percentage of space will be going from assigned seating to unassigned at Twilio?
I think that we are looking at, I'd have to double check this with our head of DNC, so don't quote me on this.
Well, I mean, you're quoting you on this, but I won't quote you separately from this. Okay, cool. Yeah.
I think we're looking at roughly 20%, 20 to 30% of the desk seating going away and being replaced with a variety of dynamic spaces. And we're going to beta this in a few of the larger offices once those offices come back online. And it's safe to have people gathering in these ways within the office, to model it, to test it, to measure it, to see how our spaces are actually being used, not how we think they're going to be used.
Sure. So just so I'm clear, and so the folks that are listening are clear, you're saying that you've got 100% assigned seating today, like one-to-one relationship with an employee to a desk.
Yes.
And you're going to be going to a point where you've got 80% assigned, 20% unassigned. Is that what you're saying?
No. Sorry, let me rephrase that. We are going to 100% unassigned. We are moving to a 100% hoteling model where every desk is a reserved desk. You reserve when you go in so that you have a space that is yours for the days that you go in. And of the space that used to be allocated for desks, we're pulling 20 to 30% of that, again, in a few locations initially, to input these dynamic spaces
that are reconfigurable, sort of like in real time. Valve has a very interesting model. Are you familiar with Valve, the company that makes Steam? They're like a gaming company.
No, I'm not, but I'm writing it down right now.
So Valve is really interesting. They have a very flat structure. There's not much hierarchy, and one of the things that they implemented very early on years ago was adding wheels to the bottoms of everything. So to the desks and to the whiteboards and to the chairs and everything. And then teams would self-assemble. Truly, like no management, self-assemble around gaming projects, and they would move their desks to like essentially vote with their feet, which allowed them to keep the same floor plate without having to like materially change the building they're in, and totally dynamically change the space and the teams and how they work. Now that's an extreme model, but it works for them. It really works for them.
Yeah, this is sort of our light version of that. But if you think about it, if all of the desks are unassigned, and a team knows that they're going to be coming together to work, they're going to grab a group of desks together, whether it's neighborhood based or sort of free for all, so that they can work together on this team. And then they move to a new project and they split, and then they develop different teams. But you're not tied to a geographic footprint that this is this team's space. End of story. But you can build and rebuild as needed.
Yeah. But one of the biggest, and there's some questions that I'm gonna pull in, but like one of the biggest pushbacks, and I'm really curious how the experiment goes, because one of the biggest pushbacks from folks tends to be like, well, where's the photo of my kids go? Where does my the umbrella that I always like leave just in case, or like how do I make sure that nobody steals my maybe it's not the office.
Your red stapler.
It's like the stapler is a good example. There's like, I think there's like a sandwich joke. Oh, it's Friends, where like the guy steals the turkey sandwich after Thanksgiving. Yeah. My point is, how do you sort of deal with the change management or sort of cultural change or shift that's necessary to be able to get people to adopt these types of systems without feeling like they've all of a sudden like lost something that they own?
We're going to be allowing each site to speak to that in their own way. What we don't want to do is adopt a one-size-fits-all model where, someone sitting in HQ or in an office somewhere says, this is how it's going to be. Everyone will have lockers. So you have a place to, store your effects every night that's not, again, tied to a specific location around the office.
Gotcha.
But for the personalization, not for me to say what this office or another office should do. A lot of that really is going to come from our employees, utilizing wall space, setting up sort of their own environments that speak to the needs that they have, because every team is different. Every site is different.
Yeah. I'm really curious if we could talk again in like a year, because I think like the level of personalization has an impact on the level of flexibility the business then has, because if I really personalize a wall, then like, what are the rules on how long that wall can remain mine, But one of the questions that I think is sort of related to this is that sort of came in is, how are you managing desk reservations? Is this something that's like a day of decision, meaning like an employee can sit down in an open space when they get in and it's theirs, they've reserved it, or do they need to reserve in advance, much like I don't know, reserving a massage or reserving like something in advance, getting a haircut?
In our early days of returning to operations, it is a pre-reservation, because we have a whole health attestation trigger, a sort of technology health attestation.
What does attestation mean?
People have to attest that they do not have COVID, have not been exposed to COVID. Our whole safety and security team has this entire sort of compliance workflow.
It's like a notary public. It's like a notary, like yes.
Right. So once an office opens, anytime someone wants to come in prior to a cutoff point, they have to reserve their desk, which triggers this technology auto flow of being issued the attestation that has to be completed, that then issues a QR code that has to be scanned when they arrived, so that we have contact tracing, so that we have controls in place to know who's in the office when, for safety reasons. And now, post-COVID, in the God willing, not too distant future, when all of this stuff goes away, it could possibly be same day, show up, oh, I think I want that desk. And you plunk your phone down on a little sensor and boom, that desk is yours. And it goes into the interface so that people can find you if they're like, oh, I wonder if so-and-so's in today, where are they sitting? So utilizing technology to solve for a lot of these things is in our roadmap.
One of the questions that typically comes up in trying to keep this as practical as possible, what happens to be the system that you're using for reservation? Do you have a recommended system that you've decided to work with, or is it custom?
We are actually in RFP right now.
Oh, I see.
So I
Okay.
actually cannot speak to
Okay.
specifically which way.
Are you
we're
sure? Because you
headed.
could totally like tell the lead person that applied for the. Okay.
Again, when we talk in a year, I'll tell you which one we went with and how the rollout went.
Great. Fantastic. I guess one of my other questions. Um, One of my other questions has to do with like, what does drawing the owl mean? You have sort of this concept of drawing the owl that I think is sort of famous to Jeff Lawson, the CEO of Twilio. What does it mean inside workplace? And like,
Mhm.
what does it mean to be going down the runway? Just because it feels like the decisions that you're making around real estate are so large and they tend to be longer term. So what does it mean to actually be agile and discovering kind of as you're building?
Mhm. For those who aren't familiar, drawing the owl is essentially building the plane while you're flying it, knowing that you have to make some rapid, decisions and sometimes radical decisions to pivot even after you've put a lot in a given direction. So, what does drawing the owl mean for workplace? Um, it means that we're always finding the balance between what we can plan for and what we have to be reactive to. That we have to bring all that we have to every project, to every initiative, to every idea, knowing that the business might pivot and we might have to pivot right along with it. So that's, I think, the biggest challenge within workplace is putting so much work toward a particular model and then
Sure.
being like, well, nope, got to pivot. But we are making a lot of data-driven choices, a lot of benchmarking with other companies, understanding what our peers are doing and why, lots of roundtables, and those kinds of conversations to make sure that we're not just making decisions in a vacuum,
Right.
but that we have to, at some point, draw a line in the sand, move forward, build what we can, and then pivot as we need to. And the
So
team has been great. I mean, my team has been remarkable in their flexibility and sort of mental flexibility of understanding the need to continually redraw the owl.
sure, that's awesome. I sort of like want to see all the drawings of owls at Twilio because I imagine they're like all over the place,
Yeah.
and in like varying sizes. And also, have you seen an owl's legs of late? They're super skinny. And like my wife actually, it was so funny. Dory, she's awesome. She was like, every time I see an owl's legs, I always feel like I need to avert my eyes. Like I shouldn't be seeing their legs because they're too skinny and not proportionate to their body, which I thought was really funny. Okay, back to workplace. One of the questions that came in was, okay, so you're making these changes. I mean, these are really material changes, going from
Mhm.
100% assigned to 100% unassigned. Did you poll the team? Did you survey the team? Um, how are you dealing with essentially uh, feedback prior to implementation?
Mhm. We did a lot of surveys over the summer, especially once it sort of was clear that COVID wasn't going away anytime soon, to understand not so much how people felt about going from assigned to unassigned, but more to understand how people use the workplace. Like what brings people into an office.
What did you learn?
Um, Unsurprisingly, a lot of it was culture and community, separating work from home. For some, it was the need for sort of heads down quiet space because home wasn't necessarily conducive because you had 5 roommates or children everywhere or whatever, or bad internet speeds, whatever it was.
Sure.
But a lot of it really was around community, culture, and collaboration. And so,
Was there anything surprising? So the community culture collaboration, I totally buy. But like, what was there anything that was like totally unexpected that hit you out of left field?
I wish I could say there was, because that'd
Okay,
make for a really
so
fun
pretty like
story.
pretty
But no,
vanilla.
it
Okay,
was it was pretty vanilla. It was a lot of what we expected. Um, People really, even at that point, really liked working from home because they found that, again, not surprising, that there's a certain amount of energy and buzz and noise in the office. And for some people, that background noise is really conducive to working. And for others, they put their headphones on and try to put their blinders on
sure.
and tune it all out. So having days where they could come in and collaborate and scrum and then be able to go home for a couple of days and really do heads down focus work, um, sort of really helped inform this new open work model, just to meet our customers where they are, as opposed to thinking, well, they have to have their own space when they come in.
Are you
No,
investing?
really, they're collaborating, which means we need more collaboration spaces.
I see. Yeah. I mean, which goes back to the point of like measuring how space is used so that you can
Right.
design it based on actual use. Um, So this actually, you mentioned something earlier around like contact tracing and sort of like knowing where folks are inside the building. Are you using like a camera-based system, or is this badging? Like what are you doing to measure? Are you, I guess the question is, are you measuring identity and location once inside a building, or are you or yeah, maybe walk me through like the technical stack.
Mhm. The technical stack is still in development, but again, privacy is tantamount. So none of the tools that we are looking at using or leaning toward have identity at all,
Gotcha. So no cameras.
other than badge swipe.
Sure, sure,
Again, and with
sure.
the desk reservation, yes, you've reserved that desk, but we're not at this moment tracking by ID for how long you sat at that desk and whether you sat at a different desk. That data is anonymized, completely. But again, like you said, for contact tracing, we need to know who's been in the office so that if there is an exposure in the building
Sure.
or within the team, we can have our duty of care to our employees
Yeah.
from a safety standpoint.
Gotcha. So access control, badge swipes, as sort of like a way to make sure. How big is your workplace team? What's like the head count?
Well, depends on which division, but within my team, the
Which
operations
tell me about
team.
the divisions. How many divisions are there? Are there 6 divisions? Is there a battalion? Walk me through what's the workplace team look like?
All right. We have a team that heads up design and construction, real estate, operations, and programs. And so I run the operations team. So we are the boots on the ground running the actual spaces, all of the facilities management, the operations, and everything that happens within the office. And my
Gotcha.
team globally right now is 26.
And then if you were to cume the rest of the teams with operations, what's the
Mhm.
total head count that's like working on buildings
I
approximately?
think I think we're 35.
I mean, for 5,000 people, like it's a bit, it must be a big operation to just dealing with all the heads and making sure everybody has what they need.
We are lean for sure. But like most workplace teams, we're sort of tasked to figure out how to make it scale. And so again, technology is a very big part of what we're building in 2021 so that we don't have to ramp up heads to do things that can be automated that
Sure.
even 3 years ago, you would need bodies to do.
Yeah. So we are at the 30. If you have to drop for other calls, feel free. Obviously, feel free. We're not going to keep you. This is not prison. But I would say that if you want to stick around, we're going to go for probably another 15 minutes or so. We'd love to have you if you can. Thank you for the questions, and also please feel free to keep tossing them in. Any question is game. There was one. So even though even though I'm the interviewer and Devorah is the interviewee in this case, it looks like there's one question for me, which is, Andrew, what is your take on the tracking of people? Does it feel like Big Brother versus your model at density and anonymous tracking? I get it from a COVID need. I guess my take on this, and Devorah would love yours as well, as you think about like identity and sort of safety and mass surveillance. Just to be super clear, density builds a system that's anonymous at source, which is different than building a system that anonymizes photographs at the edge, which some technologies do. My take on this is I believe it is important to start asking vendors, what does your device see? What does your sensor collect? And if they can show you, if we included, but if everyone can show you what the sensor sees or what the device sees or what the camera sees, you're very quickly going to get a sense of whether or not that's anonymous and whether or not that feels invasive. And then I would ask the question, like, is this technology going into places where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy? Do my employees have a reasonable expectation of privacy, or is there no expectation of privacy? And then sort of make your judgments based on like what you want to deploy based on how that'll affect folks. And then the last thing I'd mention, and Devorah, I promise I'll stop talking about anonymity in a second. The last thing I'll mention is uh, there's a hack called the SolarWinds hack that compromised 18,000 US corporations. Devorah's nodding. I'm sure she's familiar, um, uh, including the US federal government and its most critical agencies, because there was a company called SolarWinds that sells a networking software that is just used to monitor the network. It's not even like mission critical. It's just to use to monitor your internet network. And a hacker in Russia figured out how to get in, a hacking group, professional hacking group, figured out how to get into SolarWinds and then compromised as a backdoor all 18,000 of its customers. It's one of the largest security breaches in history, in US history, and made news a few months back. Today, there are cameras being deployed above desks. There are cameras being deployed in booths, phone booths, and in conference rooms, and in spaces where there are C-level conversations. Like there are cameras being deployed there, and they get anonymized at the edge. We are, as a society, deploying devices that will long-term be opportunity for compromise. And I think being mindful of what these things are and thoughtful is a critically important thing, irrespective of how you feel about density and irrespective of how you feel about sort of a workplace more broadly. Devorah, I'm going to get off my high horse. What's your take on surveillance tech? Safety is really important right now, and it seems like a lot of organizations can use safety as an excuse to surveil. So how are you thinking about this, and how would you advise the folks here and maybe your colleagues on how to think about data and collection?
Mhm. Well, I mean, as a communications company, we're sort of bound by all sorts of laws and rules about, what data we can and can't track and keep, and how often it has to be purged, and all of those notifications. So we are big on privacy sort of across the board. Currently, we have cameras at our points of entry and egress and at the server rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And beyond that, anything that we deploy is going to be completely anonymized, as you said, sort of not at the edge, but like that identifiable information at source is not part of my vision. That's not what we need the data for. So really the question that every company should ask themselves is, what do I need this data for? And does the identity of the individuals weigh into the data that will inform impactful change to what we do, how we do it, and why we do it? And if there's no substantive impact to having identifiable data that's worth those risks, then it's not worth taking it's not even worth broaching the question from my lens. So sure. I want to know that this warm body with a heat sensor, or however the technology works, was in a given place for a given time, and then spent X amount of time using various spaces around the office, so that I can look at density or dwell time in any aspect of the office, so that I can make more informed, impactful choices about how to design future spaces to meet our customers where they are, to support their business needs.
And when you say your customers, you're referring to like engineering, marketing, go-to-market teams?
Yeah, our employees.
Right.
From the workplace, it's, our customers are our employees.
Yeah. What's your, so you made this interesting comment about sort of like serendipity and collisions, creating a space where people can bump into each other. Mm-hmm. You told me a story about a 17-story internal staircase. What is that, and what was the thought behind it?
Yeah.
And is that a Twilio? And do you have that in a Twilio office?
It's not a Twilio office, but boy, it makes for fun conversations with our head of design and construction for sure about, fire code. I still don't quite know how they did that. There is an office building here in downtown Atlanta that's owned by Georgia Tech, actually, that did a study on where people have stopped to have conversations. And what they found is that the vast majority of these sort of like, oh, hey, do you have a second? Or you ran into someone? We're on stairwells or staircases. People stop and talk to each other on staircases. So they built an office building, some of which is a co-working space, some of which is dedicated to Georgia Tech, others sort of technology companies doing innovation, where they all have their floors and their fire doors and all of that. But in addition to the elevators, there is a 17-story internal spiral staircase on one corner of the building that's glass all the way up and down. It's stunning. And it was designed purposefully so that people going between floors would stop, use the staircase. And it's not like you're in a fire, a fire-bound stairwell with like dark concrete that's spooky and
it's something that you want to use.
It's something that you want to use. And it leads in floor to floor to open collaborative spaces, each one of which is different. It's brilliant.
That's really cool. Who is it? Do you happen to know the architect behind that?
Oh God. No, not off the top of my
That's
head,
okay.
but I can get back to everyone
We can
with
look it
that
up.
one.
Yeah, we can look it up. So, uh, I think one of the things that I'm particularly interested in is like uh, the the speed at which you can A/B test space. So you were talking about like being able to be responsive based on use, being able to be responsive based on need. Um, every workplace professional, I'm sorry, you're gonna hear my dog in the background. Every workplace professional is totally familiar with the senior VP, regional director, C-level person coming and saying, "Hey, I need 50 more spaces. I need an office because we're hiring a bunch of folks and it's got to be outfitted with X, Y, and Z." Um, and sort of one of sort of the new things is being able to be armed with data as opposed to anecdote to have conversations about what that space should actually be and whether or not it's in use.
Right.
So what's the feedback loop? Like you deploy a space, you design a space, you have this dynamic space, people go in and use it, you get dwell time and utilization data. Are you changing this on a monthly basis? Are you changing it on an annual basis? What's your speed to A/B test?
I hate not having an answer, but I'm going to have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, cool.
Again,
What would you
in the
like it to
world of
be?
COVID, like our spaces are still closed. We only have one office globally that is open and another that has been tagged to reopen in the coming weeks. So we don't have any data. And even once we return, again, the level of utilization because of COVID social distance restrictions and all that, we're not going to get a full picture. And so some of it is going to be driven by budget cycles, and some of it is going to be driven by feedback from the business units as we bring the data to them to say, are we meeting your needs? This is the data that shows X, Y, Z, and then it becomes a conversation.
Right.
But it's all of it is theoretical at this point until we actually open our offices and start using it.
What would you like it to be? You snap your fingers, you've got a perfect workplace. Like you've got perfect data on use. Do you want to be making changes? Obviously, you don't want to be making changes every week, but what's an ideal circumstance, assuming everything goes swimmingly? How often are you iterating on the space? How often are you drawing the owl while people are using space?
If I had all the money and all the
All the
resources,
money and all the resources.
I would probably say quarterly, because I think that gives enough time to get through a cycle of a product or a process or a project launch and really look at what the utilization was like, get enough feedback that
Sure.
the data actually speaks for itself. But part of the idea of dynamic spaces is that everything is reconfigurable. So making changes really is about either adding on more space that's dedicated to dynamic spaces or pulling out a cluster of desks and plunking down a dynamic space. And the speed time to pivot on that is just the lead time on getting a PO through the system and getting new FF&E to show up.
Sure. We had one we had an office in one of our offices, like a conference room in one of our offices that never got used. And we were like looking at the data from our entry devices and it was like single digit percentage use during like the working hours. And so someone decided to run an experiment, pull out all the conference room stuff and fill it with like lounge space. And utilization went up by 230 some odd percent, like week over week. So I think you're onto something, which is like, how do you create these dynamic spaces that are feel approachable, and then you just let folks vote with their feet,
Mhm.
and then figure out, okay, how many of these until we saturate the need, and then we move on to the next space type.
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about the future for the last couple minutes. We're going to wrap in about 4 minutes. If you have any questions, please toss them in now. We're going to be wrapping in just a minute or two. Um, you you have all the money and all the resources because of our previous sort of theoretical thing. What does the future look like? Like what explain to me like the ideal circumstance 4 or 5 years from now inside workplace, and not necessarily just the technology, but I mean like what does it mean to Twilio? What does the office or space mean to Twillians 3, 4, 5 years from now? And I know that I don't know is a perfectly valid answer, but I would love for you to speculate here and just give me some sense of what you think an ideal future might look like.
An ideal future looks at the workplace as a place of belonging, that everyone has a place to go when they need a place to go, should they need a place to go. to meet their business needs, their social needs, their lifestyle needs around work. And that our places continue to be spaces that attract and retain the best talent, that people look forward to collaborating and socializing in, that host great events and that are memorable. I'm workplace. I mean, what can I say? I'm not going to work myself out of a job either. But one of the reasons I do what I do is because I am very tactile. I am very defined by the spaces that I inhabit. And that's why I love what I do. And so continuing to create those spaces and iterate those spaces so that every Twillian has that same experience when they walk through one of our doors, that they feel like they're home, like they feel like the space is theirs, that they take pride in saying, that's my office. Bringing their kids to work on, bring your kids to work day. And, this is where mommy or daddy works, is an exciting sense of identity. And that's what we will continue to be. And that's what I'm continuing to strive for with our partners and our teams.
Yeah. There's a question about how the dynamic model lend itself to EH&S when working out of the confinements and risk-controlled areas in an office. So I think maybe the question has to do with, and Jacqueline, if you want to rephrase or clarify for me, and I don't get this right, just let me know. But I think the question is, how will the dynamic model lend itself to spaces where there's maybe mission critical work? And I think you may have covered this a little bit earlier around like taking a percentage, 20% of your real estate and applying that to dynamic. But yeah, how are you thinking about sort of the dynamic model relative to mission critical teamwork?
Well, mission critical employees, critical infrastructure employees, or those who need to be in the office, who have confidential work or whatever, will have the option to have a dedicated desk. But again, as of right now, that's roughly 5% of our employee base globally. So if you have an HR team or compensation team or a legal team that needs their own spaces because of the nature of the privacy of the work that they do, or we don't have lab spaces with a very, very small exception in 2 of our locations. So lab spaces, of course, would not be part of the sort of the dynamic model. So it really does depend on what the work is and being open to feedback from those teams to make sure that we are meeting their needs and that we're not sort of painting things with such broad strokes that we're missing the daily operational needs of some of our team members. So it's a lot of feedback, a lot of listening, a lot of iterating to capture those cases.
Do you consider the home a part of your real estate and workplace?
Yes.
Are you subsidizing internet? Are you investing in standing desks? Like, how are you thinking about sort of the fact that the home is now an extension of the Twilio office? Like, what's your take on that? Practically.
Absolutely. I mean, practically, versus theoretically, our homes are now our workplaces and have been for a year. I'm clearly not an interior decorator. I need our design and construction team to help me with my home workspace. But absolutely, we have a work from home stipend for all of our employees that are categorized as remote first. And then, of course, during the year of COVID, every employee got a stipend to set up their home environment in a way that was safe, healthy, meets them where they work and how they work. We have an ergonomic program that's sponsored by our EH&S team that people can do sort of self-evaluations, get the accommodations that they need. And that also applies to their home environments. So absolutely, our homes are now part of the workplace. They're just not a part that we service necessarily. Their food and beverage and mail services and HVAC needs.
Do you think that changes? Like in a few years from now, you said 40% of your team will be fully remote. If your headcount remained just at 5,000, which I'm sure it won't, over the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to be at 2,000 people working from home as their primary office. Maybe going in this hybrid approach dynamic. Like, I mean, we've toyed with this idea. We build hardware, and so we in some cases even build labs in people's homes and garages because we've got folks that work in 16 states and 6 countries. So I would love your take on this. Like, does the workplace does the living room or the office or the sort of garage become an extension of what you are responsible for outfitting during an employee's tenure at Twilio?
Oh boy, I'll have to talk to our employment attorney on that
Yeah,
one.
I feel like it's a legal question.
It really is a legal question. And it varies around the world. I mean, there are places where we've had to rewrite our employment contracts because employees, part of their contract is that they work out of this office. And if working from home, that's a violation of contract. So yeah, I'll leave that one for the employment lawyers to play with.
Yeah, totally. Any questions I should have asked that I didn't? Anything that you'd sort of like to close with that you feel is particularly unique to Twilio, or that you'd like to kind of share with this crew?
Only that we're all on this journey of drawing the owl together. That benchmarking with each other, talking to each other, is the way forward, because none of us can solve for all of the unknowns by ourselves. So connect, reach out, say hi to me. I'm certainly looking to say hi to y'all, so that I can continue to learn and iterate and sort of help lead the charge forward to where we're going. But boy, am I ready for our
Some
offices
in-person
to reopen.
Yeah, for real. Oh, what's your bet? What's your bet? We try to ask, is it August? Is it September? And don't give me your optimistic thing. Like give me what you actually think is going to happen.
Q4. I don't think it's going to happen. At least calendar quarter. At least in the US, I don't see it happening until Q4. I just don't see the numbers dropping within our thresholds. And the restrictions being lifted, and people even being comfortable going back in with restrictions like wearing masks or socially distance or conference rooms being closed. So that's going to be the next adventure, is sort of figuring out what are the triggers that help us reintroduce some of the amenities. And that's where I am heads down for the next couple of months.
Will you mandate vaccines, or do you have sort of a different policy on how you're going to think about vaccinated, not vaccinated, and whether or not someone can come into the office?
I actually can't speak to that at all. Again, that's sort of legal C-suite POV that's actually coming to Twillians in the next week or so, but it's not something I can speak to.
Okay,
publicly.
cool.
Nor should I.
Gotcha.
Oh no.
One thing that we heard from another group, vaccines, but we are going to wait until the vaccine is available enough for folks that anyone who wanted it can get it, and that's when we'll be sort of at like much fuller capacity, which I thought was a nice balance. Okay, we are going to wrap here. Devorah, it was awesome to speak with you. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. And
it was my pleasure. It was fun. Call me again in a year.
I will. Yes.
Let's see where things have gone.
I want to hear about the 17th story, staircase that you've implemented at Twilio's office in Atlanta. All right. Well, before we close, for everybody else, just as a reminder, we have two next week, two interviews next week. First with Nita Metab. She's the Bay Area lead of workplace strategy of Advanced Workplace Associates, which is like a global workplace consultancy team. And then we are also speaking to the co-founder and COO of a company called Range. Her name is Jennifer Dennard. It's a stacked, we've got a lot of interviews. So if you'd like to join, we'll be sending you an email after this follow-up. All of this was recorded, so you have a chance to rewatch. And if you have any questions whatsoever, I'm sure that Devorah responds to LinkedIn notes. I'm your host, Andrew Farah, from Density. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Have a great day.
Thank you, Andrew.
See you.